Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Here we are, Alpha Variance Solutions, and we are providing you our second online webinar. The title would be Boost Efficiency with Vendor Optical Recognition Character, OCR. So today we have Rohit and Nika as our presenter to introduce you how OCR will be used in the business world. So please concentrate and please listen to them because they will show you a whole new different world. And if you have any questions, please just type in to the chat box and we will have a 5 to 10 minutes Q&A at the end of the webinar. And if you have any other questions, we will please also contact us via emails. And yeah, let's start. Welcome, Nika and Rohit.
Thank you, Jamin. Hello, amazing people across the globe. How are you all today?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Today we are here to talk on this topic of boosting efficiency with vendor invoice capture OCR. My name is Rohit, and I am a seasoned Dynamics 365 FNO consultant with an experience of close to 2 decades in driving business transformation through innovation, technology, and solution. My journey is marked with various Microsoft certification along with an advanced training at IIM Bangalore. I have also had a fortune to present an influential paper in North American Summit uh, last year with my colleague Nika on the same topic we are presenting.
Yeah, that is right. And I am Danica May Makatangay. I am your Miss Dynamic Millennial. And I have been in the corporate world for almost a decade now. And glory to God for that. And I started as a certified public accountant, dealing with the debits, with the credits, with the month end close, period close. And from there I pursued the career in the consulting field. And in the past 5 years, I started unboxing AX 2012 and its predecessor, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. And I am, for the past 2 years, together with my colleague Rohit, being given the opportunity to explore new horizons and to go beyond our comfort zones. And that is through the help, through the trust and support of Alpha Variance Solutions. And for that being said, I believe it is just right that we introduce who we are at AVS and what we do in AVS. Alpha Variant Solutions is founded year 2015. It is a business that is a certified women-owned business and a Microsoft Solutions partner for business applications. We have various offices across the globe. We are in the United States, we are in Germany, the Netherlands, and India, and we also have our consulting services team in the Philippines. And we are doing implementations to various clients and rescue projects as well that are in retail, supply chain, manufacturing, needless to say, finance, project operations, and of course, nonprofit organizations that is making us a preferred and recommended partner of EU Microsoft for NPOs. And yeah, I believe that is, and as part of AVS, one thing that we could be proud of really is that we are a partner who listens. And I believe everyone as of us here today are already getting into what OCR is, what we can discuss about OCR. And with that, without any further ado, let us all started. Let's get started in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so in the ever evolving landscape of business technology, staying ahead of the curve is essential to remain competitive. One such technological advancement which has gathered enough attention is invoice capture OCR. In Dynamics 365, this powerful combination of extraction of seamless integration data with D365 suite of application can be uh, a game changer. Now we are very excited to present this way of handling invoices, which is making the handling of invoices much easier. So let us start unboxing the invoice capture by starting with our agenda. We will be first be starting a brief introduction about OCR, optical character recognition. Then we will also have a quick review of how a traditional vendor invoices are processed. Then we will see how Microsoft Invoice Capture OCR is placed in the traditional invoice capture OCR. Where does it finds up its place, and what all it's replace, and how it makes the life easier of invoice capture, of invoice processing. And of course, then comes the exciting part. We will also see the setup and configuration of invoice capture, and then we will see invoice capture OCR in action. Okay, then we will go on to summarize everything, where we will talk about the key benefits and feature of vendor invoice capture app. Then uh, we will we will place the floor for Q&A. Now, without any further ado, let's start with what is OCR, that is optical character recognition technology. Optical character recognition technology has been there for quite a while, but its application in the realm of invoice can be a game changer. Invoice capture OCR can automatically extract vital information your uh, from financial documents like PO invoices and convert them into machine readable data. Invoice capture OCR is a cutting edge technology which extracts information, and when the OCR is seen seamlessly integrated with Microsoft Dynamics 365, this becomes a strategic asset with a wide area of benefit for an organization. Now, before we go into discussing D365 invoice capture OCR, let's see how our account payable people used to do it, and are most until now are also continuously doing it. So this is a traditional invoice process. Now, uh, in the business world, in the financial world, the invoices are the lifeblood for financial transactions. They represents the financial relationship between a company and its supplier and client. But any any constraint in invoice processing leads to a strained relationship between the organization and its supplier or client. Now, invoice processing being such a vital financial operation, we let's first see how what are the breakdown of all these steps, and then we will see how Microsoft Invoice Capture places itself in this traditional processing. Now, with the process, the first comes is receiving the invoices. Invoices can be received using multiple channels. They can be received over email. They can be received on electronic through portals, through SFTPs, or through OneDrives. Also, we can have an actual hard copy of the invoice being received. So the places from which we are can receive our invoices, we are calling it as the channels. Then once you receive your invoices, the second part is capturing the invoice in the system. Then what we need to do, we need to capture invoice amount, invoice date, kind of item details, quantity, prices. We need to capture a lot of details from the invoices into the uh, into the financial system whichever we are using. Now, once this all this in vital informations are actually captured, then comes the process of validation, where you need to validate in whatever the things, whatever the information are captured you manually. Then Once this validation is done, and we check whether there is no duplicate invoices, whenever there is no discrepancy, and all adherence to the contractual terms are done, then we go on to approving the same. Approval of an invoices are again different, and in different for a different organization. Different organization have different hierarchies, and correspondingly to those hierarchies and policies, finally invoices are approved. Once invoices are approved, then comes the payment. And once the payment is approved and payment is made, then we update our financial system with the all the details of the payment as well. And once this posting or updation of your financial systems are done, then comes a very important factor of reconciliation. Reconciliation basically means you're reconciling your within the if you are having multiple systems to track multiple, or in case if you are having ERP, then you are just reconciling your ledger books with your vendor book. So once this all reconciliation is done, then basically this cycle kind of completes. Now, as you can see, this manual invoice processes involve multiple challenges. It is very time consuming because traditional way of entering the entry into the system requires manual entry, and which is not only time consuming but also error prone. Now, with because it is human dependent, it is not only leading to error prone. Because of human dependency, approval also kind of a delays because of availability or many other many other bottleneck. It leads to delay in uh, processing of invoice as well. Also, not only delays, but we also get into a trouble where delayed, over or underpayments are also done. These invoices, when processed manually through traditional manners, do not have digital data, which leads to compliance and audit risk because everything was done manually. And as there is no digital data, then it also leads to limited or no analytics. To this analytics is very important, because if we do not analyze where there is a delay, where there is a problem, then you can never solve the problem as well. So with loss of analytics also, we are in a kind of a soup. Now, we will see how this traditional method, where is Microsoft placing its vendor invoice capture in this traditional method. Now I'll ask my colleague Nika. She will show us where Microsoft invoice capture OCR is placed here, and how the process will change with invoice capture OCR being leveraged. Okay, over to you, Nika.
Thank you, Rohit. But before I discuss this Microsoft invoice process that we have, can I just take a deep breath onto that? Because after hearing what the traditional invoice process approach is, it's truly exhausting, right? It's tiring. I don't know about you guys, but after hearing what Rohit just discussed, it got me tired. It got me exhausted. And I believe that part will be eliminated and can be avoided through the use of invoice capture application. I've been an accountant, an accounts payable accountant specifically, before I've been into the consulting field. So I know the struggle of every accountants, of every accounts payable accountants doing the manual process of vendor invoicing. Imagine that in every day you need to process more than one invoice, 10 invoices in a day, and those invoices could have more than 5, 10 lines, and to exaggerate it, it could be more than 50 lines per invoice. And imagine that you need to process more than 10 invoices or 20 invoices in a day. That sucks, right? So with invoice capture application, with this introduction of OCR or invoice capture application coming from Microsoft, we are departing from that manual thing of doing the vendor invoice processes. once we install the invoice capture application for Dynamics 365, we have the so-called channels that we can configure inside invoice capture application. These channels are SharePoint, we have OneDrive, and the most favorite I have in this channel is the Outlook channel that we have from invoice capture application, because directly our vendors can interact to us through emails, and that we can set up through the process flow in the invoice capture application, and say that if whenever I receive an email with, let's say, a subject or a body that is named invoice, the invoice capture application will capture that for us through this channel. And also, um, as Rohit said earlier, until today, there are companies using manual process of invoice capture application. And if you would going to ask me, Nika, how about those invoices that we are still receiving from our vendor next to our doorstep? How about those hard copy vendor invoices that we are still receiving? Would this still be part of the invoice capture application? And the answer for that is yes, that is still part of the invoice capture application. How can we do that? See that we have different channels. We have a direct channel as well, wherein we can upload scanned copies of our vendor invoices that we receive from our various suppliers. From that, we can still depart from doing the manual invoice processing, doing the line per line item, entering those in our system in finance and operations, specifically if we are a user of finance and operations. And also, once we are done configuring those channels that I just discussed, the invoice capture application will now receive the files, those invoices going into the invoice capture application. Later, we will see that part where that received files is being placed inside invoice capture application. And those received files are being processed by the pre-built model, by the AI builder that is pre-built inside the invoice capture application. And the good thing is that in the initial version of OCR, or invoice capture application, we only have one invoice model, one pre-built invoice model. Later on, I will show to you what else we can use if we have more complex scenario, if we have more complex invoices that we are receiving from our vendors. For example, let's say we have invoices that are handwritten, or there are parts that are handwritten. How can we how can we train vendor invoice capture application to get those handwritten details, if ever, and also if those handwritten details or records and data are necessary for us to capture or to process the invoice. And once it is received by the invoice capture application, we will now move on to the next section, which is the captured files. In these captured files, what we are to expect is that the invoice capture will now do its intelligence part, will now do its magic of identifying the fields, each field, transferring that onto the fields that we have on our invoice capture application. So let's say you have vendor name, a Fabricom supplier, the invoice capture should capture that Fabricom supplier as the vendor name, and so on and so forth. And if everything is good, if everything that we configured aligns with the invoices that the invoice capture application received through its different channels, the invoice capture application will now seamlessly transfer that to Dynamics 365 FO. And also, to meet your expectation, we can do the touchless invoice capture application transfer, but invoice capture application is intelligent enough to determine if we have issue with the invoices or still not in line with the pre-built AI model of invoice capturing. And that is why we have that so-called custom invoice model that we can show later in the Power Apps, so that we can lessen the doubt of us having invoice capture application in our process. And once that is transferred in Dynamics 365 FO, now we will now go on to the vendor invoices inside um, FO, inside the finance and operations. What we are saying as a touchless, just please take note of this. What we are saying as a touchless process is inside the invoice capture application. The process we have in FO would require human intervention, but that we can automate. But in this session, in this webinar, what we are focusing on is the touchless, seamless invoice capture application. And more onto that later once my colleague Rohit shared how this invoice capture application is being configured, being set up, because we cannot do this invoice capture application on a seamless manner on an automated end-to-end process without doing the necessary configurations. And that's what we have for the next topic in this session. Over to you, Rohit.
Okay, so now we will talk about the configuration which we need to do for the vendor invoice capture OCR to work seamlessly. Now, as you understand, the configurations basically define how will the system react, how will the system work as per the situations which we talk about. So let's, without further any wasting time, let's jump into it. We will first see all the configurations on the screen, and then I will also jump into the product and show you all those configuration in the system as well. Now, first thing first, what we need to do is we need to go to feature enablement and enable vendor invoice capture OCR. So this is in the feature enablement, and you need to uh, enable that feature. Then only the vendor invoice capture OCR will come into the picture. Now, jumping into the next configuration is you need to do an installation. So you need to install your vendor invoice capture OCR app, and you will get a URL where it gets installed on the cloud, and you get an URL where you can track all your uh, invoice being captured. What we need to understand here is this invoice capture uses basically Power Platform and uses Dataverse as its backend. What it stores over there and how it works, we'll see when once we see the product in action. Now let's go to the next screen. This is basically your home screen, where you will on the left bottom corner you will see the button of setup. You will click on that setup, and then you will be able to see all the setups, a link which you need to click and do all the setup. Now, let's start with the first setup, which is basically managing processing rules. Now, what does processing rule management means? Here you can do while the whatever invoice capture is being processed, there are certain things which you can work upon. Like, for example, whatever the invoice number is, but you want that invoice number should get overridden with the invoice number setup which you have done in D365 FNO. So basically, it kinds of an override the number with the number sequence which you have set up in D365 FNO. Now, similarly, you have derived currency code where you specify what will be the currency which will be used. So in case there is no currency in invoice, or in case you want that to be overridden, that will happen. But this will only happen for your what you call it as open invoices. I will cost invoices. I will tell you the type of invoices in just a minute, and then again I'll repeat this particular rule as well. Now we will also have a toggle that if you want to validate your total sales tax amount, or if you want to validate the total amount as well, which is including the sales tax. Now, let me first discuss the next setup, which is your channel. Now, as I was telling you about channels, so channels basically specify from where does the file will be captured. Now, the system supports automatically many channels like OneDrive, SharePoint, Outlook. So these are certain channels which are supported out of the box. But let's just say if you have an internal vendor portal or you have an SFTP portal from on which when you are receiving vendor invoices, then how will you do? So whenever we are configuring a channel, a, a default automated flow gets attached to it. So what you need to do is you need to open that automated flow and customize it. For example, the flow says it will capture the invoice from OneDrive. Now what we will do is you will change the flow, and what you will do is if your files are coming in SFTP, then what you will do is you will capture it in SFTP, and then you will transfer the file from SFTP to OneDrive, and then your vendor invoice capture will start working automatically. So you will have to, you can do those tinkering, you can do those small customization by which even let's just say it is talking about 4 or 5 out of the box channel which are there, but you can do more than that. Similarly, we'll go to the next setup, which is file filters. You can do customization in the file filters. There are basically three kind of an constraint which you can put, that those only files pertaining to the location which you have specified in channel will be considered. For example, if you give a location, your folder, and you say only PDF files need to be considered, then a file other than PDF files will not be considered for invoice capture OCR. And uh, similarly, you can basically, there are 7 type of extension files which are supported out of the box by vendor invoice capture OCR. But again, as I was saying, you have an auto flow which is getting tagged. Similarly, let's just say Word file, doc file is not right now supported straight away. What you can do is, again, in the flow, you can convert, you can add a step that once you capture the file from the channel, convert the file from Word to PDF, and then you leave it in the channel, and then the file will automatically be imported. So there is that way as well. Second, as I was talking about the type, the second is the size of the file. You can specify the size of the file in KB or MB, that I want to only consider the file which are in the range of 200 KB to 500 KB. So the files which are not in this range will not be considered. Then the third kind of a filtration is filtration on the name of the file. That is, you can put the filtration that a file which is starting from INV or which is ending by INV, or we can also say a file which contains INV will not be considered. So you have all these three filters which you can put on the file filtration, and correspondingly the files which are filtered out will not be considered for your invoice capture. Now the next setup is basically your configuration group. The configuration group basically specifies the the fields which you're going to capture, and it issues a confidence score as per the capture. So as per the confidence score, you can also uh, uh, a- also tell the system, you can set up the system what actions to be taken. For example, if you say that if the confidence score is less than 50, let it be errored out in the invoice capture app. You will review it, you will and then decide whether you want to actually capture it or not. So so you can define the confidence score and corresponding action and fields which are to be mapped, which will be taken from invoice capture. Now the next setup. The next setup is basically your legal entity setup. Now there can be in an application multiple legal entities. You can choose to do invoice capture for a certain legal entities itself. These legal entities are not to be entered manually. You do a sync, then system captures the legal entity from the linked D365 FNO and place it here. And then you may choose which legal entity you want to work upon and which you not. Corresponding to the legal entities which you have chosen, the next setup is your vendor setup. All the vendors which are specified in the legal entities which you have set up, all the vendors will be automatically captured over here once you click on sync. Okay, and then you can do the setup which vendor you want to capture on which vendor you do not. Now, as you can see, I have given you a brief from the presentation uh, on how to do the setups. Now it's time to see product in action. So without wasting any time, and I know you will be excited to see how the product vendor invoice capture in action. So I will share my screen and show you the product. Just give me a minute. I hope my screen is visible. Nika, is visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so okay, let me start this. So guys, this is our uh, screen, the home page where we will land once we install our vendor noise capture OCR. Here you can see the certain dashboards are automatically provided where you can see what all invoices you captured, what all are in review, and what all are transferred. So you can see all these dashboards are auto created. Okay. Similarly, as you can see, the Copilot is also integrated in there. And I just did a query that invoices which are captured in last 30 days, it gave me all the 8 invoices which are captured. And it is also giving me that I can see all of them in the single page as well. So the Copilot is auto integrated in the invoice capture as well. And you have dashboards as well. Now, as I was telling you, left bottom corner, I have this option. I can go to setup of the system and I can see all this setup. Now, as I was telling you about the manage processing rules here, as I was telling you about format purchase order, if you want to do it, click on yes. If you do not want to, you can choose no. Similarly, currency code, we can choose whether we want to override the currency or not. Similarly, we also have an option whether credit note is feasible or not, it needs to be captured or not. This is recently added in the latest one. So also, as I was talking about confidence score, you may choose to use confidence score. You may also choose that you do not want to use in confidence score, and whatever is captured, you want straight away to be shifted to D365 FNO, that to be transferred to FNO. And I have already told you about all this, that do you want to validate the total tax amount or total amount or not. Now coming next to the channels. Now, as we can see, I can add any new channel where I can specify what is the name of the channel. I can give a description of it. I can attach a file filter corresponding to it. Once I choose a channel, whether it is Outlook, whether it is OneDrive, SharePoint, or OneDrive or Microsoft Outlook, the correspondingly flow template gets attached, and you can open this flow template and can modify the same. And that is where you can do all the tinkering. Now, this is about channel. Now let's move on to file filters. Now in file filters, as I was telling you, you can specify what is the name of the file filters, and these are the three different basic ways by which you can do the file filters. These are the six types by which you can actually system supports out of the box: PDF, PNG, JPG, JPEG, TIFF, and TIFF. Now, and as I told you, you can play with these formats. In case your format is different than that, you can convert it into this by using flow. You can add one step over there, and correspondingly automatically the file will get supported. Now with respect to name also, you can do the filtration, as I was telling you, that you can give that name should contain INV, then only it will be connect, or it should start with INV, or it should end with certain portion, or we can also give exclusion, that any file which has an exclusion of, let's say, AMT, So any files which has AMT will not be considered for file from the channel to be invoice to be captured. Now this is about file filters. Now coming to the uh, configuration groups. Now configuration groups. Okay, in configuration groups, as I was telling you, there are basically you decide what all are the fields which you want to capture. You get fields. Now, before going to the fields, let me talk about another important aspect of vendor invoice capture, OCR. Vendor invoice capture OCR basically supports three kind of invoices. One is PO invoices, then there is cost invoice, and then there is header only. Now, PO invoices are the invoices which are linked to a particular PO, but in that case header and line both are expected in the invoice in the file which is getting captured. When you say header only, that is also a purchase order invoices, but we consider that in the captured file will only take header, and lines will be taken from the D365 FNO, and it will adhere to the terms and condition entered in D365 FNO. Cost invoice is basically used for non-stock or service item. Okay, so here you specify that all the this. Now you can specify header only, or you can specify for PO header as well as invoice. Now here you specify what all field you want to capture. You may also put a mandatory field that if these fields are not there, then the capturing will not happen. So as per the mandatory, it will automatically work accordingly. Now here, as I was telling you, you can configure that what is the score level and what is the kind of a alert type you want to see. For example, 90 to 100 you are okay, 5 to 90 you have warning, and 0 to 5 you want to put it as an error. You can customize this percentage as per your need, and you can also correspondingly set an uh, action as per the confidence score. You may choose that always the whether it has error or not, whether it is even captured 1%, the same should be transferred to D365 FNO. Or you may choose that only error or warning, then only it will be captured. And when you can also say if error only, that means in only in case there is error, then only review will be done in invoice capture app. Otherwise, it will be sent to if there is no error, only warnings are there, it will be transferred to D365 FNO. So these are the kind of a setup with respect to configuration which you can do. Now coming to legal entities, you can sync your legal entities. Once you say sync all, whatever D365 environment is linked with this particular invoice capture app, all the legal entities get synced in with the click of this button. Now, as I told you, you can also do a setup whether you want to uh, uh, use that entity for invoice capture or not. You can correspondingly do the needful. Now coming to the vendors. Now vendors also can be sync. You can sync them by legal entity, you can sync all, or you can sync by selection, where you can specify that you want to sync only the 2-3 vendors where you might have done some changes in FNO and you want that to be reflected in invoice capture OCR as well. So these are all the setups which we need to perform so that corresponding uh, invoice can be captured in the system and it gets transferred into the FNO. Now, there are also which we need to understand is there are basically certain mapping rules which you need to define. And as per mapping rules, you have basically legal entities, vendor account, items, and expense type. Here you basically specify that uh, account payable clerk will check the status. So basically what will happen is what should happen for an expense type of this, what account should be taken in which legal entity. Or so basically for item also you can specify that item code which is used by your customer, it can be different, and it will be different for you. So for mapping, you specify which item number will be mapped to which item number. And also you may have you may have certain very customer specific business rules which you want to do, which you can configure over here. These mapping rules are not mandatory. These are only specific, are only used for a very specific kind of a case. So now I will ask my colleague Nika to take over, where she will be talking about uh, the actual invoice capture, where she will show it in the system, where she will capture the invoice, and we will see in the system how the invoice is getting captured, and then it is getting transferred to D365 FN. Now, over to you, Nika.
Thank you, Rohit. So those are the manual setup that we need to do for us to be able to use invoice capture application properly. I mean, on my end, I would rather have those manual setups be configured to spend time configuring those setups that Rohit just discussed instead of what? Instead of doing manual invoice processing every day, right? So after we have configured those setups in the system in invoice capture application, and if you could remember still the part wherein we discuss how invoice capture application is getting those invoices that we are receiving. So this is the first part that we are into. We are on the receive files section. So the receive files section is the first step. It is the first path that all the invoice captured via different channels are placed. So we have, if you could see here, we have import channel type. These are coming from emails and from file system. Our file systems are being derived from OneDrive. We also have our SharePoint, and we also have the part wherein all the scanned invoices that we have, or those invoices that we are receiving as hard copy directly from our vendors. We can click on upload files. And from here, we can see that invoice capture application is allowing us to select at least for a maximum of 20 files at the same time that we can upload that inside the invoice capture application. But if we have configured as well correctly our SharePoint and OneDrive as receiving channels of our invoices from our vendors, then all of those will be captured directly by invoice capture application. And to prove you right by that, we have the OneDrive, and these are all the invoices that I uploaded. And we also have our SharePoint that were in. This is also the invoices that I uploaded, which being received by the invoice capture application. And the part that is we are having the invoice received via email. So this is the invoice that we receive. So we configure that every invoice that contains, or every email that contains invoice in its name, will be received by invoice capture application. So that's the reason why we all have this received files inside invoice capture application. And once this is received by the invoice capture application, and all of it do have the captured state, it would automatically be moved in the section called captured invoices. So in this captured invoices, the other or the rest of the configurations that Rohit discussed earlier, like the file filters, like the configurations, the confidence score that we have, this is where it is being used into. So we have captured invoices that are already transferred in D365 FO, meaning these are the invoices that found having zero state or zero errors by invoice capture application. So remember earlier that we just put errors only in the configuration group that we're in. If the invoice capture application found zero error, onto those invoices that it captured, it would automatically transfer everything in D365 FO. Now, if the question that might come in here is that, Nika, how could I configure the confidence score in a way that I am sure that this would work in my invoice capture application, that even though I put a very low confidence score in the error state of the invoice capture, I know that everything that will be automatically captured or automatically transferred from invoice capture going to FO are all correct, or all fields are defined correctly by invoice capture application. So we have different clients right now who are using invoice capture application. And as we said earlier as well, this is an AI built application. So from time to time, we can teach invoice capture application with the different invoice formats that we have. So from those feeding, from those training that we are giving to invoice capture application, our client, from over the time, they are decreasing, they are decreasing the error level, so that since they already know and confident enough that invoice capture application can capture those fields from different invoices directly. And if you could remember as well earlier, I said that we will show to you that part wherein, aside from the pre-built AI model invoice that the initial OCR or invoice capture application does offer for us, we now have the AI models wherein we can create our own invoice model, our custom invoice model. This is a non-code customization of the models of the invoices that we are trying to train invoice capture application. I did it myself just to prove as well that this is a non-code part of doing the invoice capture application, because I don't have any background with the coding part. So this is how I trained the invoice capture application to accept different invoices, to accept different collection of invoices, so that if I do a quick test in it, I know that if I upload any file in this from the invoices that I trained the invoice capture application, it would analyze and it would show to me that, hey, Nika, this is what you feed me. This is what you trained me in this AI model. And I would show to you that this is what I already learned. So in this, we can see that it can capture the supplier name or the vendor name with a 92% confidence score, could also capture the invoice number, the invoice date, so on and so forth in this invoice. So this is what we can do for you. This to offer help as well on how we can utilize further the invoice capture application, because in the as mentioned in the initial version, what we only have is the AI pre-built model, which is uh let's say in a bit not we need to train it, we need to have a continuous improvement via the invoices that it is receiving from different channels that we have. But because of that Power Application, Power Apps, we have the AI model wherein we can personally train the invoices. And that sounds exciting to me because that's a no-code part of the invoice capture application. So going back here in the captured invoices that we have all those status of invoices that are transferred. So some of this I already did post in the FO, and but some of this is still not posted in FO, so that I can show to you that even though I didn't touch any of these invoices, it is automatically transferred in D365 FO. But also, as I have said, there are invoices. This is a good thing, the good part for invoice capture application. It would still show to us if there are invoices that are having error, that are having that did not meet our standard of the confidence scores. From here, we can see that I have two captured invoices, each of those with one error. And this is the part that invoice capture application can really help us avoid as well mistakes or errors once we are having that process in the finance and operations application. So going back with the transferred ones, if I go inside FS1 ending 25 invoice that we receive via email, I believe so. So this part, we could see that there's 0 error, and we also have 0 warning. And notice that we have two-side viewer for invoice capture application. We have the invoice itself that is attached. So this is part of the parameter that we can set up in FO under invoice capture area, wherein we can toggle to yes, the attached invoices. And from here as well, we can see that invoice capture application did transfer everything correctly to its proper fields. And notice, I want you to notice this part, the business unit cost center department, that so-called financial dimensions, and also the part of sales tax. So the sales tax, it is not the sales tax that we are expecting, like the sales tax group and item sales tax group in FO, for the very reason that that is an internal data that we have inside FO. So I believe that our vendors will not be familiar on how we name our sales tax group, our item sales tax group. So in this part of invoice capture application, what it is doing is it validates, it matches the total tax amount and the sales tax amount per line. So that is the update as well that we receive for invoice capture application aside from this financial dimension. Okay, now, since it is automatically transferred in B365 FO, I could just simply click on Open Dynamics 365, and this would lead us to the pending vendor invoices if it is a purchase order or a header only purchase order, and it could be also used in the cost invoice only. For the cost invoice type, remember that we have two types of invoices. It could be for invoice capture, it could be vendor invoices, it could be um, invoice journal. So for the invoice journal, that is the typical type wherein we are having the ledger to ledger or expense ledger to vendor account type. But with this vendor invoices, I believe for some of our clients, they use the vendor invoices because it is more appropriate to their process for the very purpose that most of the vendor invoices to capture the procurement categories that we have. And we know as users of D365 FOD, invoice capture or the procurement categories hold posting profiles inside them. So if I go now inside our invoice number, FS125, so once I come here, this is almost similar with what the invoice capture application does have. It's just that we are already in FO and going back as well on the financial dimension. As a functional consultant right now, I do not recommend to use the invoice capture application for business unit, cost center, and department. For what reason is that? It is because we want the touchless, the seamless approach of using invoice capture application. And to same reason with the sales tax, financial dimension are internal records, internal data of the company. So our vendors will not be knowledgeable of those things, right? So they have their own format of invoice, and us, we also have our internal records in the system in FO. So with this, if we are not to use the business unit cost center department in the uh, invoice capture application, what we can do is simply default or put a default on your procurement category, on your item numbers for the financial dimensions for the lines of the purchase order or for the lines of the vendor invoice. And we can put as default financial dimensions on our vendor accounts. That's how to solve that so that we can make use of the seamless, touchless invoice capture application. And from here, I could just simply do that the update match status that is already a default or set up by us for the matching rules. And now that we have a match status that is passed, if I go to totals as well and to check that totals, I could see that the invoice amount as well as the imported sales tax are correct. And with this, we can proceed with posting, or if there is prepayment application that we need to apply onto this invoice, that we can do so. I believe we only have 1 hour onto this, so let's go back onto our. That's how we invoice capture application do transfer automatically, seamless attaches, and that's how that's the recommendations that we have on how we can really utilize the touchless part of invoice capture application. And now we go on to the features and benefits. As we have mentioned earlier, we can import or upload there through direct channels 20 invoices at the same time. The invoice capture application can process 50 invoices at the same time when it is being captured or captured by different channels that we have. And average invoice processing time per invoice, take note of that, per invoice is 15 to 30 seconds. If us, I mean, on my personal side, personally, I cannot process invoice 15 to 30 seconds, even though I do that every day before. I cannot do that. But invoice capture application can do that for us, can eliminate the human prone error, can eliminate the us processing much of invoices manually. So I believe that is all that we have for today. I'll give the floor back to Rohit. Rohit, you are on mute.
You're right, Nika. As much as we wanted to spend more time with these amazing people, we are. It's almost the time to say goodbye. But before that, we would like to share our contact coordinates with you guys. My email address is rohit alphavsolutions.com. Similarly, Nika's is dmae@alphavsolutions.com. You can also see the QR code of our LinkedIn. You can connect with us by scanning the same. Now, uh, uh, also, this is all the useful resources which we have actually used for our presentation purpose, and it would not have been possible to make this webinar possible without these references.
Yeah. And also, of course, we want and we love to know your thoughts regarding this webinar that we have done. And kindly scan the QR code that we are showing right now in the screen. Or we can share as well the link going to this QR code so that you can take a survey, because we know and we love to know your thoughts. We love to improve how we can also present in the future different topics for Microsoft 365. And yeah, now the floor is open for our Q&A session. If we can raise our hands or type in the chat box if ever we have questions regarding what we just discussed in OCR, invoice capture application. I believe right now someone is typing on our chat box a question. Okay, so regarding the charges, that is also part of the update that we have for the 36 for the invoice capture application. So with those charges that we have on the invoice capture application or the invoices that we receive from the invoice capture application, the pre-built model as well of the invoice capture application does have the knowledge on how to take those charges going into the fields that we have, just like what we have showed earlier here as well. So we have these charges, but this specific invoice that we have doesn't have the charges. So if we have the charges, please expect that the invoice capture application will be showing the charges here. But if not, as I have mentioned as well earlier, we can train our invoice capture application to have a custom invoice model that will capture those charges for us from invoice capture application going to finance and operations. I hope that answers your question, Raja. Okay, so with that, I mean that the invoice capture application will do as part of the update, will automatically input those charges that we have in the system or in the invoice capture application. And with that as well, we have those charges inside FO. And I do understand this part that you are trying to say with the charges code, since we have an internal to us with the invoice capture application or with the finance and operations. So similar with the financial dimension that we're waiting for some update as well, wherein we can actually do a seamless part or seamless integration of the financial dimension going to from invoice capture to finance and operations. So this part of the charges code that we need to manually key in the finance and operation. But for the charges matching or validation with regard the invoices being captured by the invoice capture application, that is the part that we have for invoice capture application. Thank you so much. Anything that we still have by far? I'm sharing the link now going to our survey form.
Yeah, we'll wait for your feedback on the survey.
I believe with other questions that we are to get, please contact us. Contact Rohit and I for further questions that we might have in the invoice capture application and for the deep dive discussion of invoice capture application. And if you could join us in the North America Summit this October 2024, please meet us there. We will be discussing more about invoice capture application, the deep dive one, wherein we'll be focusing on how you configure really the invoice capture application. How do you custom build your invoice so that you can train invoice capture application and so on and so forth. Okay. If we are good now, and thank you everyone and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you and have a nice day to all of you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.